Well, thank you, David. It really is exciting to be here today as part of this South by Southwest event. And I am particularly thrilled to be joined here on this panel with three of my very good friends, longtime colleagues that I have served with in the military, who are just phenomenal leaders and innovators in their own right. With me today, I have Lieutenant General Dash Jamieson. Dash has 37 years of distinguished military service, having commanded units from the squadron level to a career culminating as the director of the United States Air Force's Intelligence, Surveillance, Reconnaissance, and Cyber Effects Enterprise. She led both Air Force and joint units in locations to include Germany, Hawaii, Florida, Afghanistan, and Virginia. She was the driving force behind building a cohesive team of the Air Force's intelligence and cyber forces into a single warfighting organization. Lieutenant General Jamieson was the Air Force representative to the 18-member Intelligence Community Senior Leadership Forum, representing Air Force equities across the United States intelligence enterprise. Also joining me today is Lieutenant General John Shaw. Lieutenant General Shaw has 33 years of experience in national security space and aerospace engineering, with a focus on leading large-scale technical global organizations. General Shaw's last active duty assignment as a three-star general in the United States Space Force was Deputy Commander of United States Space Command, where he directed over 12,000 personnel worldwide to defend the nation's critical space capabilities and deliver space effects to terrestrial warfighters and human society. Before joining U.S. Space Command, General Shaw was the last commander of 14th Air Force and the first commander of Space Operations Command at Vandenberg Air Force Base. General Shaw spent over 30 years as a leader of large, complex, and highly technical organizations, responsible for some of the world's most critical space capabilities within both the Department of Defense and the National Reconnaissance Office. He's also served as a senior policy advisor in the Office of Secretary of Defense and as a co-chair or member of several U.S. delegations discussing space security issues with Russian and international delegations. And last but not least, Dr. Joel Mozer is joining us. Dr. Mozer is a physicist and a strategist in science and technology. He recently retired as the Chief Science Officer of the United States Space Force, where he developed long-term strategies and prioritized the service's $300 million annual investment in basic and applied research. He also served on the Chief of Space Operations Staff as the scientific advisor and led efforts to anticipate future trends, threats, and opportunities for the Space Force related to science and technologies. Prior to the establishment of the Space Force, Dr. Mozer was a space scientist with the Air Force Research Lab and has more than 30 years experience leading and executing research related to the autonomy of space systems. Wow, what an incredible group I have with me here today. We have an expert in intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. We have an expert in space operations, and we have an expert in the science and technology of space, including the application of AI. A perfect trio to help us get into this topic on human-machine teaming with AI. Now, there's a lot to be said about artificial intelligence these days and how it's changing and continuing to change the world in which we live in. And one thing for certain, the advent of AI is here, and it's here to stay because of the many benefits we've seen AI can provide when it's used constructively. We see AI advancing our ability to diagnose diseases and create life-saving vaccines. We've experienced AI and its ability to rapidly translate languages to break down barriers to communication and collaboration. And we all have interacted with AI in some form or another in our customer service exchanges with organizations in every sector of society. In all of these applications and so many more, AI is proving itself as a quintessential do-use technology that can provide advantages in both commercial and military settings. The application of advanced AI in military operations is beginning to prove very effective in creating comprehensive competitive advantages to outpace adversarial threats, particularly in support of complex decision making where there's a lot of information to sift through, analyze, make sense of, and take action on in very short tactical timelines. In these cases, we are often reminded that artificial intelligence is not a substitute for human intelligence, but a tool to amplify creativity and ingenuity. But how? That's what we're going to dive in on today. So Dash, we're going to start with you. Now, you recently published a paper on human-machine teaming with AI as a means to reinvent the intelligence cycle and create decision advantage. If you would please walk us through the fundamental premise of the paper and what an improved framework for decision-making looks like when humans and machines are teamed together.
Well, I first want to say thank you very much, Kim, and of course, my distinguished panel members, both John and Joel, for actually having this discussion on human-machine teaming, AI, and its impact on national security. What a treat, not for just the audience, but for me to be a participant in this endeavor. I also want to give a special shout out to the Mitchell Institute for publishing my paper, The Human Machine Teaming, The Intelligence Cycle Reimagined. And I would also be remiss if I didn't mention the Special Competitive Studies Program Intelligence Panel that really has taken a serious look at the examination of AI and its impact on the intelligence community. But to get to the macro overview that you first asked me about, I would first have to, let's put some context in this. And I would offer, with the proliferation of publicly available information and commercially available collection, such as imagery and communications from space, whether it be Planet Labs or Starlink as examples, and couple that with the intelligence community's exquisite capabilities, it has led to a near ubiquitous coverage. This results in both opportunities and challenges related to what we call too much data. Today, the Intel cycle is really centered on humans and working every aspect. However, with the advent of artificial intelligence and generative artificial intelligence, and from now on, I'll just call it AI, the traditional cycle can no longer keep pace and address the volume or scale of today's data-rich information environment. Additionally, the existing tools can't advance the cycle to the degree and speed the future and today's multi-threat environment requires to deal with our near-peer competitors. The vast adaptation of artificial intelligence necessitates a shift in mission-focused human-machine teaming that can operate with flexibility and speed to meet ever-compressing data-driven decision-making timelines. So let's put some context and understanding. What do I mean when I say human-machine teaming? So I'm going to give you my definition that I based my paper off of. And it's the task delegation between humans and machines partnering to use innovative technology-based capabilities to achieve desired outcomes. I'm endeavoring to advance the delegation of tasks according to the current DoD policy of human on the loop. So I'm not removing that or going or discussing completely autonomous capabilities. I'm going to work with human on the loop. So let's put this in something that we've dealt with for years in study and academia and actually in practice. So I'm going to use John Boyd's OODA loop as the construct to give you another way to comprehend what I'm trying to say. And with the aim and speed, the OODA loop tries to more rapidly advance decision advantage over your competitor. So in the loop, if we use observe and orient, machines excel at volume searches, identifying patterns, outliers, anomalies, and sources of origin. Their processing ability now reaches speeds previously unimaginative. For decide and act, humans excel at validation, intimating inferred relationships, and delineating intent to address the why for critical decision making based on rules of engagement, policies, or international law. And that really is the macro premise of the paper.
Yeah, what a great paper. And thank you for pointing out the Mitchell Institute, Dash, because that is the organization that published the paper. And I certainly encourage all of our listeners to go take a look and dive in on that paper that you just talked about and those insights that you explained in great detail with some really interesting visual graphics to really walk us through this shift towards human machine teaming and how we can leverage AI more effectively in that decision-making process. And thanks for reminding everybody of John Boyd and the OODA loop, observe, orient, decide, and act, and how this human-machine teaming process really helps advance that and accelerate that in this new age where we have to be able to move much quicker because there's much more information to be consumed, much more information to be interpreted and to take action on. So with that, John, I want to pass the mantle over to you in this idea of human machine teaming and the framework that Dash laid out. Given what we know about the space domain and the operations that are happening in protecting and defending our capabilities in that domain to address the threats in that domain, talk to us a little bit about how you see humans and machine teaming, this idea of humans on the loop when it comes to supporting decision makings and using AI to address those challenges.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. And hey, I'd echo what Dash said. Great to be part of this panel. Great to see you and Dash and Joel again. And if the audience hasn't already written it down, yes, go get Dash's paper. Find your best AI tool and say, get me Dash's paper, and it'll be right there in front of you. And take a good look at it because it's foundational everything that you're going to hear from this panel here today, and it's terrific. What I would say is that, and Dash's paper and her comments just now were in a kind of a general nature covering all domains. I think what she said is applies to all domains, and we need to look at the application of AI in an all domain capacity. But your question to me, Kim, was about space, the domain, and I think I would like to point out that I think no domain is more needing of AI to be effective in a human AI teaming relationship than the space domain. Now we skipped over a really obvious question that would have taken the entire day, and that is, what is AI? Exactly. But at its cutting edge, it is rivaling or even exceeding the cognitive abilities of humans. Some would call that super AI. And in doing so, in many cases, it's doing it in counterintuitive ways that humans may not think about or do or behave, but super AI is doing those kinds of things. And so why is that helpful to the space domain? Well, probably more than any other domain, except maybe cyber itself. Space is a counterintuitive domain from a physics perspective, from our understanding of how it operates, because we just, as humans, don't spend a lot of time there. And so AI is going to find ways that we can't even practice or conceive or test on how we're going to need to be doing activities in the domain in the future. The second is everything Dash said in general about AI and its needs is especially true with space, because you can't understand what's happening in the space domain without a lot of data and a lot of sensors and the ability to analyze that data very, very quickly and discover patterns in real time with the speed at which things could happen in the space domain. So it is a natural fit for all the capabilities AI is going to bring. And then lastly, I would point out, it's true today and it'll be even more true in the future. Almost every platform that humans are operating and will operate in the space domain is not going to have humans on it. It's going to be an autonomous, self-guided, and likely self-learning kind of platform. So if you envision a future where we have hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of platforms in the space domain that are operating autonomously, how do they fit into Dash's construct, that OODA construct of especially the decide act portion. Some of that is going to be autonomous through some platforms. We need to find the right dividing line, the right teaming concept in a macro sense of where humans operating remotely from those capabilities are part of that broader team. So I'd round it up by saying the space domain is ripe for exploring all these possibilities on AI and human teaming.
Thank you so much, John. Really great insights. And appreciate you pointing out that everything that we're talking about here, while very, very pertinent to space for all the reasons that you've described, really does cut across all the domains. Which leads me over to Joel. Joel, you've been a long-time scientific researcher in the application of AI across multiple domains, including space. So what do you see as some of the immediate fundamental ways that this framework of human-machine teaming with AI can offer some new advantages?
Well, thanks, Kim, and let me echo the comments of my panelists. Thank you for assembling this. This is a August group and a great opportunity to talk through this very important problem. So, there's a lot of opportunities for AI, and we're just seeing them emerge these days. Obviously, as we've been discussing today, AI has huge benefits for operational problem solving and decision making. It helps us get past our human limitations and ability to see patterns in our biases and the time it takes us to think through a problem. AI can help with all those things, and we're seeing that every day in a lot of different areas. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that in places probably we never really expected to see things. The other thing that we're seeing today is it's just making us more efficient humans. Technology typically does this. If you think the advent of electricity or the internet, that technology allows us to do more and better and faster things. And AI is doing that through robotic process automation and other things that offload some of the tedious things from humans. And as John said, in space, we have that problem in spades, the need to have automation and AI is helping us because we're just not there. But the principal thing that I think that we're just seeing a growing opportunity is the situational awareness that AI can give us. And by that I mean, we're not able to see all the patterns. If there's one thing that an AI is good at is detecting patterns and exposing those. And maybe we as humans don't see that. So it helps us understand our situation in ways that we probably couldn't have without it. And that's a true teaming relationship. And, some of that awareness is internal to the human. And I hope we get a chance to talk a little bit more about this. When you talk about human-machine teaming, many times the machine helps the human in a very internal way. There's some fascinating work going on where AI, looking at data from the human body for like electroencephalograms, can analyze your mind state and tell you whether you're susceptible to task overloading or your body is stressed, your mind is stressed, and cognitive security might be an issue. So it truly is a teaming relationship that I think we're just barely seeing scratching the surface in terms of how that's going to play out in the future.
Yeah, for sure. And this whole idea of situation awareness, certainly I think everybody can appreciate that being able to use artificial intelligence to see things and bring information together in ways that the human might not be able to see because the environment may be too big, too complex, too far away, as in the case of space, too vast, or there's just too much complexity going on for us to really discern what's really happening. And to your point, Joel, what are the patterns of activity that are going on in a particular situation or in a particular environment that we need to be aware of, that we need to pay attention to, that we need to draw our attention to? Artificial intelligence can oftentimes help us zero in on what it is that we need to know, help us zero in on that degree of intelligence that's most crucial, and understand the changes in the environment that would draw our intelligence, our insights towards the next step of, decision making and potentially taking some action. And certainly we find this in the case of having to address threats, again, across all domains. So Dash and John, I'm going to take it back to both of you from your operational experiences. When we think about the threat environments that we're faced with, beyond just knowing, beyond just understanding, beyond just awareness, we're thinking about using AI to help us discern intelligence and to help us make decisions to stay safe, stay ahead of a potential threat. How does human machine teaming help us do that in a very fluid way that responds to changes in that environment? And if I turn the question around a little bit, I'll also ask you to think about how can AI potentially make us more vulnerable?
Well, John, if you don't mind being the intel threat person, how about if I take a stab at this first and you can add color and correct my misperceptions?
Please go first, Dash, and hopefully you'll say everything, and you probably will, so I have nothing left to say.
No, I don't think so. But I think, Kim, you and Joel and John have brought up some really great examples of how and why we need to be safer from the environment we're facing. You really only have to look at the threats today that we're facing to see times have changed. And so I'm going to set some vignettes of literally things that have happened in the last 60 to 70 days that we would not have imagined previously. So let's kick it off with, the Houthis firing the first anti-ship ballistic missile a few months ago in combat. The Russians and Ukrainians using hundreds, if not thousands, of small unmanned aerial systems every single day on the front lines. And we've seen that cycle just explode in speed, capability, and development. Technology integration is moving faster than we could ever predict. Using artificial intelligence to help track and destroy these small UASs, as one example, is a problem all militaries, all governments, and all populations really need to think about or should be addressing today. Let me give you another vignette that could blow your mind. The Ukrainians have figured out how to use unmanned surface vessels to destroy a large part of the Russian Black Sea fleet. They sent out an unmanned surface vessel hundreds of miles away to destroy very large, complex ships. This is from a service that did not have this capability less than 24 months ago. Let's take a look at what Israel is claiming in Gaza. They are saying they are using artificial intelligence to make target recommendations against equipment such as rocket launchers today. Now, they say that the AI is there to make a recommendation. A human reviews and validates or invalidates that recommendation. If it's a valid target, they then send it to the soldiers in the field to action on. You kind of have to go, oh my gosh. Integration of technology in innovative ways is proving its worth on today's battlefield. And I got to say, I would tell you, initially, it is rewarding those first and early adopters. Something for us to really think about. So then I want to give you a perspective from the other side. And when I say the other side is, hey, what about in the near future when nefarious non-state actors get a hold of these types of technologies and try to use them against the United States or our allies? Are we ready for that today? Because today is here. No one should think that the bad guys aren't thinking of how to use ChatGPT or other released AI tools to increase their target efficiency, their OODA loop, whether employing small weapons or large ones, or ones that we use deterrence against today. It's imperative we look ahead of this curve. These are not lessons you want to learn after the fact. So, kind of to get to Kim, so what's going to keep us safe and what's going to help us mitigate some of these threats? I don't want to just throw it over to John, but I'll give you a couple sentences of my thoughts. And I would say, that's why I wrote the paper. I truly believe that a reimagined intelligence cycle with human machine teaming has to be effective in being ahead of these bad actors and not just sensing and infusing, but identifying and validating their actions before they happen so that we can make our decisions appropriately. That's only going to happen if we start experimenting, exercising, and training with AI today in all facets. So I'm going to hand it over to the true operator to correct me and to add some color. John, over to you.
Well, just as I expected, Dash gave all my answers in better ways than I could. So I guess I have nothing else to say. No, I do. Maybe I'll add one thing. She is absolutely right when she says that we have to stay on top of innovation and not underestimate any potential adversary, state or non-state actor anywhere. And we have to leverage the best of what we can do as a nation and as a set of allied nations to do that in an innovative way. And so to get to the theme of this broader forum that we're all participating in, which is looking at dual use capabilities, we have to absolutely have good integration between the commercial sector and the Department of Defense as we look how to leverage AI across the board. Now, I think a quick viewpoint on history and why this is so obvious and why the convergence, particularly for space, points us this way. When we first started doing things in space in what I call the first space age back in the Cold War, it was government that led the way in virtually everything. And then after the Cold War ended, we got into a different age where it was still being led by government, but commercial was starting to get innovative. And the best example is we had this government system called GPS, right? But there were many commercial companies that figured out how to use it in so many, many different ways and innovative ways that led to wealth generation for the nation and for the world. Now we're in a completely different era where commercial is actually leading the way in a lot of space technologies. Dash talked about a couple of them earlier with regard to ISR from space, which most of our data is now coming from commercial capabilities. And new communication systems in proliferated low Earth orbit architectures are being led by commercial ventures. And government is actually trying to latch onto those in many ways. I'm not sure the latest and most accurate figure, but the amount of government investment in AI right now is something like 2 to 4 orders of magnitude. That's a lot. 2 to 4 orders of magnitude less than commercial and financial industry and so on investment in AI right now. It would be foolish for us not to be looking at all of that and find ways to integrate it in an innovative way to stay ahead of this full spectrum of potential threats that could come at us.
Yeah, absolutely. But yet we're not necessarily taking full advantage of it in the ways that we could. To your point, John, the investments are low compared to commercial industry. The opportunity is there. The challenges only continue to increase. And yet, we haven't fully adopted it, and certainly haven't fully adopted AI in a way that it can interact well with humans. Humans can interact well with it to create the kinds of advantages that we're talking about in the decision-making arena.
Yeah. Hey, Kim, if I could add real quick, maybe that ratio of orders of magnitude, maybe that's the way it should be. Maybe we let commercial be the engine that generates all the solutions. What we can't do is not be part of it.
Exactly.
And get that right solution that benefits us from a security perspective.
Absolutely. We absolutely need to tap into it. So why is it so hard, Joel? Why are we
Yeah, Joel.
so slow on the uptake of some of these technologies and taking advantage of what commercial industry is driving?
That is an excellent question, Kim, and one that frustrates me often. But let me start. You asked what's so difficult. Let me start with what is so easy, and it kind of gets to some of the things that Dash and John were saying. We are at a point in time in the development of AI. Early on in the 90s, it was kind of obscure. We talked about artificial neural networks, and then we had a sort of a pause, and then we discovered deep neural networks, and there was a resurgence, and then most recently it's been these large language models and the transformers architectures. So this round, this sort of new S-curve that we're on, one of the characteristics of it is it's very easy to implement. It's very democratic, very open. A lot of developers are producing their products in this space in a very open way. And it's fairly simple. If an old user like me can go and open a simple Python script and connect together some of these things and play around with the artificial networks, there's a dark side to that. That means the barrier to entry to the bad guys is pretty low too. It's fairly easy to hook these up. Just reading an article about how scammers are being accelerated by virtue of having the capabilities of large language models and chatbots. Just think about the spam that you get in your text messages, your emails. Now you can start interacting with some of those spam emails, and on the other end is a chatbot. So it's allowed them to scale up that kind of thing. So the point here is there's a lot of risks, like we talked about, because as this technology becomes available, it's kind of in the hands of good guys as well as bad guys. And from a government perspective, we don't deal with that very well. We want to have solid mission assurance. We want to make sure we're not adding risk to our systems and that we're not creating new vulnerabilities and threat surfaces, attack surfaces. So that tends to make us very risk averse in these new technologies. And one thing that we have to be aware of, we recognize that technologies such as AI and large language models are coming at us faster than ever. That also means that we have the mandate to respond to the risks faster than ever. We need to be preparing faster. We don't have the luxury to debate the morals and the ethics and the possible risks for years before we implement it, because we'll get run right over. And that's sort of the downside of exponential technology development, is that it also incurs an exponential cost in terms of addressing the risks. And so, in short, we just got to get off our duffs and do it, because if we don't, we're going to find ourselves on the wrong side of that. And I completely agree with John about the orders of magnitude investment. If we're not in there as part of that early on, we're going to pay the price later. Just think about the development of the internet. Had we had the foresight to think about putting in just a few security controls in the TCP/IP stack early on, we could have avoided a whole lot of cybersecurity problems since the invention of the internet. So we need to think through those. We can't shirk our responsibility, but we got to do it quickly. So that's kind of what makes it hard.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's risks in not taking advantage of it, because certainly AI is available to the adversaries too, as you point out, Joel. So how do we get ahead of these risks? And what's it going to take to really get to the point where we trust our systems, we're willing to use these systems, and we're willing to work with them in a way that's going to continue to help us advance in all of our processes, including our decision making? Dash, what do you think?
Well, I want to comment. I think John brought up a really great statement when he said, why can't we just rely on commercial? They're leading us, and they're doing this, and they're doing it for a reason. And I'll bring up what Joel said is, we're going to have to take risks. To me, it's about encouraging us to experiment and fail and learn and address and fail not as much, but advance forward, or come to a fork in the road where you say, that doesn't work, I'm going to go this way. But you're continuously testing, trying, and experimenting. We do not have a culture that allows that to happen in a way that you are rewarded or you are highlighted by taking these ongoing risks and failing. I like to say failing forward. So I kind of go. I think another thing is, and it kind of touches on it. We get wedded to status quo very easily. The traditional cycle for the intelligence community is extremely effective, and it's been the backbone of the intelligence community for over 50 years. However, we all know as technology advances, and as we've explained in today's information dominant environment, it requires a reimagining of a cycle to harness these capabilities. And I'm not saying we got to throw the baby out with the bathwater all the time, but I just would propose we got to experiment. And my paper just is one example of, hey, let's take these interwoven four functions: discovery, generation, fusion, insight, delivery, flesh out the task delegation of human machine teaming, and use these AI tools simultaneously and continuously to evaluate how are we doing it and see what are the anomalies, what are the relationships, what are the patterns. It allows us to actually then start to develop, Kim, what you said, a somewhat of a confidence that you can identify techniques, tactics, and perhaps some procedures, identify new procedures. But it's going to also require a restructuring of training to fundamentally shift and ingrain this type of culture and identify new skill sets required to encourage this to happen. I would tell you that authenticating information and source attribution is a critical function to ensure the identity of the data. And every decision maker, every operator wants us to be able to do that. And they want us to be able to provide the ability to discredit deep fakes, bots, or malicious fabrications. Using these tools, using this experiment, using AI in this teaming fashion actually gives us not just confidence, it forms trust. Kim, I think you said, how do we get trust? This forms trust in our partnerships, in our data, in our algorithms, and it allows our decision makers and our operators to understand how we're doing this. And we need to be very transparent because it allows us to work out, as Joel said, inherent bias. I think this is how the US and its allies collectively ensure that machines are used where they shine and in ways that they add value, while our most precious resource, the human, is used where they can excel and advocate for the critical decision-making outcomes in the timelines that are required. Old cycle will not allow that to happen. We gotta do something different.
Yeah, that was really well said, Dash. Thank you so much. There was so much there that you added to the discussion here today. And some of the reasons why we don't use AI is because, we don't have enough familiarity with it. We need to experiment with it. We need to work with it. We need to better understand how this teaming process is going to work. And we need to deal with the idea that there could very well be inherent biases in the AI that we need to unpack, realize, or potentially build into our data in such a way that we disrupt those biases in the future. That we recognize that there can be inherent biases in our data that we need to avoid. That we need to make sure our data is more complete and more diverse, so that those biases can be worked out. But without experimenting with the AI and using the AI, we may never come to that realization, which in and of itself can be a real risk and could impact our ability to trust that technology. Okay, we're running out of time here. This has been such an exciting conversation. I think I'm going to hit you, John, with our last question, and then we'll see if others want to add on to it, which is, what do you envision that the world's going to look like, or maybe the outer world's going to look like 20 years from now, for humans and machines working side by side. And how do we evolve as a society to make the most out of the capabilities that we can derive from artificial intelligence as a mission partner?
Well, pick your future, your sci-fi movie or whatever. There's visions of utopias that AI brings us, right, where it solves all of our problems and solves health issues and extends our lifespans and makes things and eliminates poverty. I mean, those are very hopeful, optimistic. Then there are the dystopian visions, right, where the machines take over and humans lose all creativity and we become a secondary species on our own planet. Call me either a realist or an optimist, whatever. I'm a pantopian. We're gonna have the same sorts of challenges living with AI that we have today. There are going to be some great benefits, and Joel actually hit it right. Electricity was seen as, oh no, it's going to ruin human society. No, it's going to be wonderful for human society. Well, it advanced human society, but we brought with us everything that we had before that, right? I think that's kind of how I think it's going to play out. There'll be some wonderful ways that AI helps us as a society to understand ourselves better and to advance further into the cosmos. And those are going to be some wonderful things. There are going to be bad actors, like Joel was talking about, that are going to try to use AI for their own nefarious purposes, state or non-state actors, as Dash said. We got to be prepared for those. So when I say pantopian, it's going to be great and it's going to be awful all at the same time, and we have to be prepared for that. But in the end, I'm optimistic. I would say the most important thing we need to do, I would just say, Dash's answer to your last question was absolutely right. Repetitive training, exercising, wargaming, and such. I could point to many examples in the past, and we're out of time here, where military doctrine advanced with new technologies. But the way it advanced, in a good way, if you used it right, was that you practiced with it and you wargamed with it and you found out how to use it in war most effectively, whether it was combined arms or armor or maritime carrier aircraft or whatever, right? And those that didn't strive to learn how to use it effectively suffered defeats and then had to learn it the hard way. Let's learn it the easy way and do it right the first time.
Absolutely. Joel, last word.
Yeah, I'll add to what John just said and what Dash said earlier, a couple of things, 2 points. One is, I agree, as Ray Dalio said, with AI, we're creating new species that is very smart, has a lot of facts, but has no common sense nor any emotions. So in that sense, I call it the anti-dog, because dogs have lots of emotions, but no data or facts. So we have to learn.
So more like a cat. Okay, I got Joel.
Okay. We have to learn to live with that new species. And I think it's more than any technology that's come before. It's going to be culturally changing because that's the way technology works. It's exponential. The other thing I'll just quickly say is, we talk a lot about artificial general intelligence and whether there will be some sort of singularity someday where these machines outthink us. And I don't know if that's the case, and it's going to be hard to tell. My point is that I think today we're marching towards artificial general intelligence. These AIs are getting better and better. We probably won't recognize the day that it passes the threshold. And so we just need to be careful that we're paying attention to how we're applying it and understanding that it's going to impact us very deeply and culturally. And just think about 20 years ago before we had the cell phone, the smartphone. This is going to be that times 10, 20 years forward. So strap yourself in. It's going to be exciting.
Kim, if I could just jump in for just a second. I think what Joel and John have talked about is extremely encouraging. And I think that they both highlighted, we don't ever go into the future alone. There's a reason why we have partners and allies. And when electricity was discovered and when we looked at the internet, what did we do? We talked about what's the ethical issues. And we didn't do it in a vacuum. We actually had forums and we had vast communities of interest that talked about what are the ethical issues of implementing this technology. I think, and then I'm heartened and warmed to read the vast numbers of nations that are having these conversations together. So as we progress in the 20 years, I'm very hopeful that the dialogue isn't just going to end with talk. We're actually going to establish, as we have in the past, international norms and laws to ensure that we all can grow together. I'm with John. I'm positive.
I think we're all in the same boat. We're all positive. We're all excited. There are so many opportunities in front of us. We've got to work with the AI. We've got to understand the challenges and risks, and we've got to unpack all of these additional concerns that you've touched on here today and make the most of it, because it really can offer us a significant amount of benefits. Thank you so much, Dash Jamieson, John Shaw, Joel Mozer. What a power team I've had the opportunity to join with today. My dear friends, thank you for being with us. Human machine teaming with AI. What an exciting topic. Now for the rest of the session. Over to you, David.